dates of which you can decide to make to seek nominations to sit as advisory on this panel.
Okay, so are we happy with the suggestion that we go to the Federation? I didn't remember it all. Of providers and ask them, and then potentially seek a provider from Lincolnshire who potentially could come. Does that feel okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lee, did you want to come in?
You may want to consider the order that you do things in. So seeking nomination from the Economic Advisory Panel may see an education rep come from the Economic Advisory Panel. So that may then influence who else you want to come on to here in an advisory capacity. So I'd suggest that we approach the Economic Advisory Panel first, and then we reach out to education providers and any other representatives that you feel would add value into this committee to give you the advice and the insight that you require.
Okay, so makes sense. So we go to the advisory panel, Economic Advisory Panel first, and then we work out who else fits in that space. But we're all happy with the principle of 3. Jackie.
Thanks, Chairman. I think it's very important that we do have somebody from further and higher education, especially when we're looking at things like the agro industry and the it's so high flying at the moment. We need to give them prominence and we need their input. Thank you, Chairman.
No, that's good.
I agree with Ruth, Chair, actually, about the private providers as well. They quite often get forgotten about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just in terms of making that, tidying that up as a recommendation for the governance side of things. So obviously we've got a recommendation that considers and endorses the proposed amendments to the terms of reference that picks up this reference of the Economic Advisory Panel and the premise that we're seeking to engage 3 additional non-voting members. Are we all with the going through the Federation, perhaps for with agreement, whoever we seek to appoint, we can have some agreement. Would we appoint at the next meeting, or yeah, okay. And if there were options, Ruth, what would you propose in that space? So if we end up with an endless list of people, and
usually we're quite clear and we'll say that we want one candidate to be agreed amongst the parties.
Okay, good.
But you need to consider those and then appoint them.
Yeah, okay. So perhaps we could just set that in the recommendation that myself as chair and the mayor would consider those and then make a recommendation to the next committee. Is that okay? Good. Are we happy? Have we got everything we need from a recommendation perspective? Good. Okay. So we'll are we all happy to support that paper and the recommendations that we've set out? So if we could all do by show of hands, please. The diligent being recorded, is it all? I think it's unanimous. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So that discharges item 6. Then we'll move to item 7 on the agenda, the Skills England Local Skills Improvement Plan. Again, paper considered as proposed before us. We have 3 recommendations which note the purpose of the local skills improvement plan, support the rationale for the scope of the next local skills improvement plan, and at point 16, and then support the engagement with employers when the research phase of the LSIP, I will use that then, starts later this year. Are there any questions? Nick, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I was just interested. It looks pretty well covered with all the sectors there that are proposed. But what are we going to do to kind of address any potential gaps? Things do occur during the course of time, and inevitably maybe some gaps in there. Just interested to know what we might do to address that, and how we might help any underrepresented groups as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're waiting for the final version of the guidance from government. It hasn't actually been published yet. We are expecting that to say that the Combined Authority has a role in co-designing, and so we can take that point forward and make sure that there is a mechanism for picking up something in between the plans, because the plans at the moment are being published once every 2.5 to 3 years, and that's a long time. So if we build that into the mechanism, we can make sure that happens.
Just a very quick, very helpful paper. Thank you very much. I think it's important to actually incorporate into this and to recognise the extensive work that's been done by some of the districts on this. You know, with the partners, the partnership is very embedded in some of the districts, and I'm very keen to actually not lose that as we go forward and to incorporate it in. So if we could just be aware of that, Chairman, thank you.
No, good, absolutely. And also, oh, sorry, Phil.
Yeah, I'm just looking at paragraph 8. The analysis covers employment across 10 sectors, which is fine. I'm just a little bit concerned that there's nothing in there about ports and logistics, particularly since that was one of the sectors that we talked about in the devolution deal in terms of connecting the ports to the rest of the UK from a strategic viewpoint.
Yeah, I can pick that up. So paragraph 8 is a description of the sectors that have been included in the industrial strategy at a national level, in addition to additional sectors that Skills England have used. Separately, in point 16, I've provided a list in the paper of the sectors that we propose are included, not excluded, in the local plan, but I note that it doesn't actually say ports and logistics. I'm just checking, so we will make sure that's in there. Thank you.
You can. Well, that's, I mean, well, you're the local, so we'll absolutely take your advice, and that's why I welcomed your contributions at the early. Thank you. So I will leave it on now, which means you'll hear well, I'm sharing as well, which is the other thing with my friend here. So, okay, is that okay, Phil? You think that's covered there? But as you said, broader those points. The other point really, which is, and this is, so it's not just about setting the policy here, it's about making sure we raise awareness of this research. You know, it's when it starts, actually, we need to reach out as many businesses as possible. So don't consider yourself as just people supporting a paper today. Go out and champion this and champion the cause and make sure businesses connect with it, because we need their voices. It's no good us setting policy without considering what their contribution is. I mean, the premise that you asked about, Councillor Jackson, was actually, you know, we all look for sectors. I immediately look for steel, as you automatically do. So it is advanced manufacturing, it will fit into defence. So there are catch-alls, but sometimes there are businesses that you do feel, you know, what do they lend into best? But, you know, as long as they're absolutely covered in opportunity terms, that matters. But and so the suggestion was that we probably would include ports and logistics in that space. Yeah. Good. Okay. So you've heard the recommendations then, if there are no other contributions. Are we all happy to support them by show of hands? Oh, I should have had a proposer and a seconder. So I'll propose and you a second. That was seamless, wasn't it? We're all still training. We're all still on the training stuff. Are we good? It's unanimous. Thank you. Let's move then to item 8 on the agenda, Get Britain Working White Paper and Get a Lincolnshire Working Plan. We have a paper that sets out 2 recommendations to note the progress to date in convening the core partnership and creating a Great Lincolnshire Working Plan, and 2, to approve the Great Lincolnshire Working Plan subject to any minor amendments approved by the Chief Operating Officer. Presumably that would be in conjunction with the Mayor, I would think. Yeah. So we'll add that to the recommendation. Okay. Any questions on this paper then? Nick first then, thank you.
I'll come in. Somewhere in there, Chairman, there was, I'm sure, mention of something like 120 organisations dealing with it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how we kind of work with to coordinate all those different organisations without causing too much duplication.
think that is almost the very essence of this whole piece of work, and that's one of the things that this exercise has helped understand. Because whilst we would probably agree that there are limited numbers of training providers in some of our rural areas, and we don't always necessarily have the same numbers as in other areas, when you start to think about the 120 that you're talking about, who are supporting health outcomes and a whole range of other things, it is very difficult to coordinate. And I think within having spoken to other officers through this process, certainly across Lincolnshire rather than the whole of Greater Lincolnshire, there is probably more of a challenge because of the isolation and around communities. So we proposed in the paper that there are 2 phases to this work. Phase 1, which is producing the initial paper that we were asked to do at pace by the government, but then to have a second phase where we really start to understand and map this challenge, because everybody wants to do the best for their communities, and they might set up new schemes and new programmes without realising that there's something else already there. So what we're proposing to do is bring together an extended partnership to actually really get into some of that detail, to do exactly what you're saying, to try and reduce that duplication if it exists.
Jackie, did you want to go?
Yeah, I did. Thanks very much. Again, it's a fascinating paper. It's very useful to have a document like this with so much information which can be kept and carried forward. So thank you for that. Just a little concern when it comes to phase 2. I really do feel we need to get in a little more to the huge amount of work that's been done by the district. For instance, West Lindsey engaged with a consultant in getting this forward, and there's been a very detailed delivery on the UK SPF funding, and I think it's important that that is brought in. For instance, I don't think we've really had that much link with the MCA about the work that's been done. So could we request that we have a greater link there? But also I think there's a risk that if we don't look at the detailed work done by the districts, that there could be wasted duplication. Thank you.
Absolutely agree, and actually the skills officer at West Lindsey District Council was included in the list of stakeholders that we spoke to for the report. But going forward, when we extend this partnership, I would hope that somebody from your area and others will be on that.
Thank you.
Well, that's good. I think at the heart of this, there are the people that live here as well, aren't there? The challenges around, people being in multi-generation benefit families, them not knowing what system is on offer if you're so far away, what training, what advice, what support is out there. And I'd also add, if we're having to use UK SPF when you've got all this national funding, you'd say it's probably, we must be duplicating, or worse still, it's being funded and it isn't getting to the places where we need it to be. That's engagement right. Stuff. Definitely. So no, it's a great opportunity, and clearly there's a lot to do going forward, but this is the start of that process, even though you've had to work through really tight timescales to get to this. You're just recognising that, and thank you for the work you've done so far. So could I take a proposer on this paper, Ingrid? Thank you. Into second. Thank you, Rob. And we've just got that slight amendment on the recommendation, Chief Operating Officer plus the Mayor. Are we all happy to agree by show of hands, please? I think we're unanimous again. Good, thank you. So we'll move to item 9 on the agenda, which is the report of the care leaver covenant, which is something I know that I've championed now for some time, really passionate about making sure that we support our care leaver community. The recommendation is that we agree that the authority commences the process to become a care leaver covenant signatory and supports the development of an action plan for care leavers through the authority's employment and skills programmes. Do we have any questions from members? Okay, thank you, Jackie.
So I have loads of questions. There were a lot of pages in this report, in this pack. Yeah, absolutely support this. The Care Leavers Covenant has been in place for a number of years now, so very keen to support this. But a couple of questions. Who's going to be responsible for the action plan? And what will be the district involvement? What is the expectation of the different bodies within it? Have we got that level of clarification yet? Please, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So we're seeking today for the combined authority to have the mandate to take forward the first step of signing the covenant. The action plan will be the action plan of the combined authority and will report back into this board as the Employment and Skills Board. But effectively what we need to do with the action plan is understand what actions we can take with our employment and skills programmes and how far we can go. So the process of signing the covenant, yes, you sign the covenant, but effectively what you do is then work out what you can offer in addition to the care leaver to community, and we'll engage with districts and local authorities in doing so. In fact, many local authorities are already signatories to the care leavers covenant. And so that's it. I think it's something like 70% are already signatories to the care leaver covenant. And so we would encourage others through this process to become, so that we've got complete coverage, and then work collectively to develop what we can do in this particular space.
Yeah. Absolutely. Any other questions? And obviously we pick up some of this in the next agenda in terms of using some influence and policy resource about supporting care leavers in this space. I'm happy to propose. Andrew, second. Yeah, thank you. Are we all happy to agree by way of show of hands, please? Unanimous again, if that's okay. Thank you. Great, thank you for supporting that one. So item 10 then on the agenda, devolution of the Adult Skills Fund. So we've got 4 recommendations. Clearly the premise of our engagement here is that the Employment Skills Board endorses certain recommendations to scrutiny first, and then having scrutiny being on the 5th of November, and then it will come back to the main board for the main board to accept this, the combined authority board. So there's several aspects to this, and I'm going to take them line by line as recommendation. Obviously there's several papers. The first thing is, I'll say item 1, which is to endorse the ambition and strategic priorities for the Adult Skills Fund set out in this report at section 9. So that's at the end of page 2 and at the start of page 3, 104 or 105 in the main pack, which is obviously a 1 principal ambition, and then A to D in terms of the ASF priorities. Are there any questions in that and those ones first? I'll just give you a minute. Okay, I'll say there's no questions on those. So I want to take each recommendation together on that one. So I'm happy to propose from the chair, Ingrid second, and way of show of hands again if we're all happy to cover that one. Sorry, this is going to have a bit of showing hands, but that's unanimous. So we'll move then to recommendation 2, which is to endorse the draft Adult Skills Fund Strategic Skills Plan, which is actually Appendix B. It says Appendix 2, but it's Appendix B in the document starting at page 177. I did have to have a big look through. Claire guided me on that. So that's this document. So thank you to Claire. Yeah, it is actually down as Appendix 2, but it's not. It's Appendix B. So this just sets out the nature of the challenge, if I present it, the demographic, and how we're using. So yeah, that starts page 177. Jackie?
Yeah, I don't know my page number. I mean, I've got information on page 125 of my pack. I don't know whether that is at this moment. I can get it in at any point, but I do need to get the question in.
Okay. Now,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, on page 125 of my pack, there is a list of learners who meet residency eligibility criteria. And at the bottom, it's striking through ESOL. So that is the funding of English, through foreign language. Is that the wrong point?
Well, yeah, it's the wrong bit.
Okay, so you tell me
I am
when.
saying no to that one, but we'll pick it up later, I promise. Yeah, we'll pick you up on that one.
Okay, thank you.
So are there any questions on Appendix Item B, which I think is a fairly straightforward, sizes up what the challenge is in the space. Ingrid, are you happy to propose? Yeah, and it's second. Yeah, Rob or Neil, we'll go Rob because he had his hand up first. Are we all happy to agree by way of vote and show of hands, please, on that one? Good, that's that one carried, thank you. So we'll go to item 3, of the recommendation, which is to endorse the commissioning plan set out in the draft Adult Skills Fund Strategic Skills Plan, which is again is part of Appendix B, pages 22 to 24. Which is just a scoping of, it is actually part of the overall plan, but clearly we needed to have a separate recommendation on that from a commissioning perspective. It starts commissioning plan, it's the big paper, it's big page 199, it just sets out how we're going to commission. It's a very factual, keeping us legal process, transparency and the governance attached to that. Are you all happy? Nick,
I've no idea whether I'm in the right part now, actually.
Oh, right, okay, so.
But I'm hoping I might be.
Okay, well, we'll.
Just a general question.
Okay, well, we'll take general questions.
How are we, somewhere in there, how are we ensuring that we're getting the sort of quality of skills? And how are we holding them accountable to that?
So it's a commissioning plan. It's a good question. We'll let go. It wasn't that general. It was more specific than you thought. Claire.
So once this funding is devolved to us and we start to procure it with colleges and others, including local authorities who currently deliver, Lincolnshire County Council has been authorised to deliver and administer the programme on behalf of the Combined Authority through a service level agreement, and they have really good expertise in having done this before, and so they will be able to use all of those expertise to make sure that they are managing the quality of all of those who deliver, and will be making sure that they produce a delivery plan, and they will have KPIs in place to make sure that performance is adequate.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay, so if we're all can I take a proposer and a second, Ingrid, to propose? Thank you, Phil. So are we all happy just by way of hands to discharge recommendation 3?
Yes.
Unanimous then again, thank you. So now we'll go to item 4, which is the more substantive item, which there's two elements to this. The first element which I intend to take first is the summary of the draft policy changes, which I'm going to take line by line, and I do want to take agreement on each of these, and then there is this, and finally at the end, which we'll deal with the draft changes to the funding rules and performance frameworks. We'll take that last, but I'm going to go through, because all of these impact on that, so it makes sense to go do that in that order. So I'm going to take this as 4.1, which is from the table that we've got, procurement of non-grant funded providers. So the current situation is as set out, and we're proposing that we will go to setting a minimum and a maximum contract value, and that the authority will not be able to award multi-year contracts because we don't know what the future budget is. And so extensions to contract that are performing well can be considered by officers in future years to propose to come to us. Are we all happy with the premise, or any questions on that item? I think I will. So if we're going well so far, I'll take the vote on them as in summary at the end. I might take so many, and then if we've got okay. So 2, then support for learners hardship fund, obviously already made available. We've just adopted our care leaver covenants. Obviously the new provision would set out the new support fund for care leavers with access up to £1,500, which they would get from their provider, provided they go on an accredited course. Any questions on that? Would we all be happy with that so far? I can see nods. Okay, so I'm going to go to 3, qualification eligibility. Currently, a level 3 award in education and training is not eligible. And obviously the proposal is to change the eligibility of level 3 award in education and training so it can fully fund regardless of the salary of the earner, but use its adult skills fund for a 2-year trial to give us a chance to evaluate that spend. So training doesn't then be a barrier. Seeing nods, are we all okay so far? So we'll go to 4 then. Adult Skills Fund is for UK residents, and the authority will make sure that under the new proposal will fund Greater Lincolnshire residents. Employees who work but do not live in Greater Lincolnshire will be funded by their own authority, because obviously that's where they reside. Seems fair. Okay, you all happy? Good. I'll take that's good. Next one is 5 then, licence to practice. So currently only HGVs, but we're now saying that we would use our devolved powers to support unemployed residents to get their first green cards for construction skills certification, enabling to work in the sector. So it's not enough we've trained them, then we actually give them a licence, pay for a licence to support them to be able to get a job under this provision. Obviously they need to get a job. They're not going to just get a licence and then not get a job. So are you all happy with that premise? Good. We'll go to 6 then, residency rules. Current national rules have recently changed, but we would propose that the resident eligibility goes back to the 24-25 rule that say that learners must be ordinarily resident for 3 years. Yeah, that's good. Brilliant. Thank you. Then we'll go to 7. Well, actually, I'm going to take the first 6 and then we can go any points of clarity on that one later. So can we take a vote on the first 6, please? A proposer, Ingrid, seconded by Andrea, and then if we all in favour, please, for the first 6. Are you happy with that?
Yes,
Yeah, cool. So that's unanimous again for those. I'm going to go to 7 then, which is English for speakers of other languages. So the proposal is that we seek a more inclusive environment, not segregating people out as ESOL, but what they would build provision through non-specific, but i.e. therefore literacy, to create a more inclusive culture around literacy for everybody. Jackie.
Yeah, I'm not convinced about this one, Chairman. I think there's a potential own goal here, and I think we need to think about it a little bit carefully. So if we're crossing it out of the list, are we absolutely clear that there won't be any withdrawing of the funding that we would normally use for that particular programme? Are we absolutely clear before we make the decision that the government won't say, well, you know, the funding is for the whole package, and if you remove that, you're not getting the funding? So I would want to be very clear on the funding, but so a couple of other things. I think the specific training, this is very vague, this paragraph. Other needs, there's nothing there. What does that mean? What other provision is actually available? Because we need to remember that the agricultural industry in Lincolnshire is very heavily dependent on foreign workers, the transient workers, and in previous years there has been a deficit. You know, I remember one year, but this is pre-COVID, so it's a bit old. There was sort of 19,000 positions needed in the field. We filled 15,000. There was still 4,000 empty, and we do need people who are going into the fields to be able to understand English for the sake of safety and keeping the work going. So if you are going to take this out, we need to check the impact of taking it out, not just from the funding, but from the effect on the industries which will be affected by it. So I really would advise caution on this one.
Okay, so I'm going to just come back on those points and I'll bring Andrea in. So first of all, nobody's proposing removing the funding. We're just saying we want to make it as part of an inclusive literacy and numeracy funded stream. And so just as we're not going to choose, you know, it's for practitioners to choose what course someone goes on as they develop their learning journey. We're just not segregating it, when I use that word advisedly, we're segregating people at the minute. What we're saying is actually there'll be a mainstream provision around literacy and numeracy, of which learning and developing your language skills, irrespective of what country you come from or where you live, as long as you live in Greater Lincolnshire, I hasten to add, given the other point, will be included. So you're not separated out. It's absolutely, in that space, there's no change in funding at all. Andrea, I'll bring you in.
Thank you. I'm quite passionate about this. If we actually look at the figures of literacy and numeracy, the last 10 years, it's been a really downward spiral for Britain. We do not compete on the global stage in these areas. So we have a massive issue as a country. And I'm quite passionate about this. The thing is, ESOL, it doesn't go to, let's say, native Lincolnshire people. And you know, I stood on a manifesto to put Lincolnshire people first at the forefront, and £1 million a year goes on this. And I think we need, as Rob, our chairman, said, a more inclusive scheme, which actually goes to the Lincolnshire people, because we've got to upskill them. They are left behind, very sadly. And we, you know, I can understand your concerns about, you know, will the government stop funding if it's £1 million, but it's not going to native Lincolnshire people anyway. And this scheme, I think, as a combined authority, it'd be wonderful to have a scheme where we have a major focus on literacy and numeracy to upskill everybody. And then I'd also say that I can understand your point, Jackie, regarding the businesses who foreign workers work on the land. But I'd say, you know, are they prepared to put some money into private businesses to ensure we get literacy, English literacy? And on top of that, I'd also say, you know, look, my 8-year-old son, he uses an app on my phone to learn Italian. There's so many apps for nothing now to learn languages. So I don't believe it needs to come from the taxpayer.
Okay. Any other questions? Nick?
Nick, can you put the mic closer to you?
Yeah,
please?
sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I'm a bit like Jackie. I have similar concerns. I suppose probably coming from agricultural area, we employ a lot of foreign nationals in the industry, and I kind of see both sides of the argument in some ways, but I think asking businesses to fund it is probably pushing your luck, I think, personally.
People can themselves on
but I still think it's quite an important tool for people to be able to use. But I think what I've discovered about eSol is that it seems to work better if you're speaking, say, you want to be in engineering, then you do your kind of maths side as part of that kind of engineering course, because actually it becomes easier to understand rather than just neat maths or neat English. But if you're going into manufacturing business, where it's agricultural or whatever, you've got to understand the English to understand the kind of safety side, if nothing else, what's going on. So yeah, I have some concerns.
Can I come in, please?
Please do.
Yeah. But I'd say, look, if you come to another country, you'd be expected to learn the language. Why should the British taxpayer foot the bill? If you want to work in another country, then people should be learning the language themselves. Well, money's tight. We know money's tight across the country. We're not going to get much more from the government. I think that's given. So we need to look for private investment for growth. That's what I'm trying to do. We're trying to do as combined authority. It's got to come to a stage where we draw a line. And I think that's that stage. This money is far better spent across the county where everybody can access literacy in English.
So the funding is quite clear, would quite clearly still be prioritised for literacy, of which some learners, because I've never, when I taught in FE, I never had a learner that was at the same level. So not having English as your first language would clearly be a different level to someone who's lived here all their life, who probably just struggles to construct a sentence and write a letter. So they're all very different premises. But so the funding is definitely still, the priority is still to invest in literacy, but to enable the colleges to be able to look and take levels of different learners to different subjects as required, but also the opportunity for private businesses to train to their business, not just to the culture and other aspects of the course. But the proposal is absolutely not to cut funding for literacy. It is to focus it for everybody. Jackie, forgive me. I know you.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I actually agree with an awful lot of what you're saying. When people come to this country, this is an expectation. Unfortunately, given the culture of some of the people who come, that will exclude a lot of the older generation. Women particularly, who can't go out into the community because their culture doesn't allow it, and they are disempowered. They can't decide whether they're coming here or not. So, I mean, I taught in central Birmingham, where a number of my classes, I'd be lucky to have one local child in. from the other cultures. And if you're saying, I mean, I really want you to be absolutely sure that removing this doesn't remove the funding, because if it does, well, that is just a loss to Lincolnshire anyway. If that million goes back to the government, then we may as well have it, thank you very much, and use it. So if they say, right, out of that 18 million, we're going to take that million back because you're not putting forward the fund we want, the course we want, if we check that, that's fine. And I'm happy to support then, but I haven't got reassurance for that at the moment. And the other thing is, yes, literacy absolutely worries me enormously, the lower literacy figures, but we would need to find a way of making sure that those opportunities still go to the people who come in as well, because if we want inclusivity, we want them to come in and to be able to communicate with our community. If there's a language barrier, that also brings dangers further down the line. So if you're going to remove this, you're talking about, it's very vague, it's too vague. At the moment, I'm not going to support this. I'm happy to support it when I'm given the reassurances and the information, but this is too vague going forward at the moment.
Okay, so we're not able to give answers to some of those questions because we have to set our policy principles first.
Mhm.
And then once having set them, they will go to scrutiny, well, they'll go back to the main board. There will be an opportunity to do that. So we're not able to give answers to those things because until we've set a policy principle, we're not able to consult on that. But to be clear, we're picking up an exemption to the way in which we set a policy here. The outcome of which is quite clearly that there will be more resource under our proposals for inclusive literacy and numeracy. That's the desired outcome, but without segregation, and that's the important.
Can I come in
point.
actually?
Yeah.
My whole point behind this really, because I'm going to give you the stat now, I found it, which prompted this. 1 in 5 adults in England have poor literacy skills, struggling to read even at the level of a 10-year-old. I mean, isn't that shocking that in Britain we've got to that stage? And I think in Lincolnshire, this is a chance for us to really actually prioritise the people in our country to make sure we lift that and we can be this beacon of hope of to make sure they can compete not only for jobs in the county but on the global stage. I mean, that is quite a stain of a statistic on our country, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But some of those people might be speakers with English as a second language who have lived here under the 3-year eligibility criteria, who then want to advance their literacy rates and can access a bigger pool of funding than they would have done if it was just segregated as an ESOL course. So it genuinely, you know, that's the pitch.
So you are, forgive me, Chairman,
Yeah.
you are giving assurance that there will still be availability for the same people, but with more
From
people,
a bigger pot.
for
Yeah.
more people, but there
Yeah.
will still be that original availability
Absolutely.
as well.
From the same pot.
Okay.
You know, because it is.
Although I did prefer to see that we have some checks and balances in there, that they've been in the country for 3 years, you know, like back to the early point, that's important. And I'd personally like to see that people have been working for the last 12 months, actually putting money into the system to help pay for this. I personally would like that as an added one, but that'd have to go to the committee.
Yeah. Okay. So Claire, thank you.
So
It's on and off, I don't know.
we absolutely can pick up on some of those points that have been made and we can come back and provide that information. I know that in the paper it talks about needing to do a public sector equality assessment, and we can look at the impact assessment. There are some things that legally we're not allowed to do because of the rules. But in some cases, we just need to go through those technical elements. So I know the employment one, for example, I know is particularly difficult.
I know the point is you didn't show, which I promise you, we're discussing policy and it's hard to set policy. We need to be able to have everybody's debate. Rob.
Thanks, Chairman. Jackie's point was that if we weren't doing it in the way, or doing it the way Jackie says, can the government take the money back? We must know if that's a possibility or not. If we're all above board and everything's fine, then clearly the government won't be retracting money. We surely must know if we're in that bound or not.
So at the moment, we're going through a period of what's called readiness, and we have to meet a number of conditions before the money and the powers are actually transferred to us. There's a timetable in the paper that says that's likely to happen over the next few months. So as things stand right now, we've got to produce our rules and we've got to submit those to the Secretary of State for Education before they make that decision.
That's a standard process though, isn't it?
Yeah.
What every combined authority goes through. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had the debate there. I'm happy to propose. Andrea to second.
Yeah.
Are we all, well, is there any other alternative proposals? There being none, we'll take a vote then, please. All those in favour? And those against? There's no abstentions because nobody's left. Is that okay? Good, great. So we'll go to item 8 then here, which is the subcontracting rules. So this is something new. We would introduce a 25% cap on the amount of grant funded amount a grant funding provider can automatically subcontract without seeking permission first from the authority. So again, this is again making sure we can protect local providers too, and they're not just subbing everywhere when we've issued it. Are we all, any questions on that one? Good, no problem. We'll go to 9 then. Over delivery, DfE make automatic payments to grant funded providers if value delivery is exceeded by 110% for ASF and 103% for 103% for what, FCFJ, really?
I'm so sorry. I don't know how that acronym has slipped in. It's,
and I don't know what it means, so I don't know.
It's the Free Courses for Jobs Fund.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Claire. We feel Adult Skills Fund. That's the paper. Yeah. So I knew that one. I've done my research. Right, that one foxed me. So our proposal will be no automatic over delivery. Instead, increases of funding will be to providers will be managed through a grant or a contract variation, with opportunities increased for delivery of mid-year performance review and availability of funding. So we're not giving somebody else a license to control our money. We're saying actually we can manage that better. Are we all good on that? Good. And then we'll go 10, online learning, self-directed online, remote distance learning funded by DfE. The proposal there is we collect evidence for year 1 to understand the impact and cost of self-directed learning, including online and training that has no live person, tutor, assessor involvement, particularly for residents with prior learning below level 2. Anything you want to clear up on that? Because that's quite technical, I think.
It is.
Is it a quality thing?
Yes.
Yes.
But there's distance learning and distance learning. And I think what we want to do, and certainly an officer recommendation to me has been, let's just look at this in a bit more detail, because there can be really good examples of how this works very well, and we certainly wouldn't want to disadvantage our isolated or rural communities, for example. No. However, we don't know, so we would like to collect some information.
Okay, we all happy with that one? Yeah. So we do just need to have a vote on 8, 9 and 10. If I could take a proposer, Ingrid, seconded by Rob. Are we all happy to agree by show of hands, please? Unanimous, thank you. And then we've just got one final point, which is under Appendix A, which is the Adult Skills Funding and Performance Management Rules. I just had one slight tidy up, forgive me, I've got the page number which I've written on. It's 10, I'm sure it's 10. It's 11, I lied to you. On page 23 of 64, the big page 135, I think I'd just like to look at the language. I think in the table, I don't know I've spoken about this, Claire, just something a bit more consistent with the table. So this is, having gone through the proposal and accepted that ESOL point by majority, I don't think we need to put 11.2 in, because I think 11.1 covers it. I think that's probably the best way to do that. So I'm going to propose from the chair that everything else is consistent with the table we've just covered, but I'd remove 11 because it's a bit narrative-y. There was another point you wanted to make on that, so I'm just going to make. Is that okay? Cool. So after to propose from the chair, but just remove 11.2 on page 23 because it's just a bit chatty. It's not really needed. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Neil. Okay, all those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous. Thank you. And I think that covers every single bit of that paper. So thank you. It's quite a weighty one, but obviously we're in that early stages. There are no other items that I've been notified of or seek to share. So I'd like to thank you all for your contribution and attendance, and have a safe